Good morning, everybody, and thank you for a great explanation of how not yet, up one, how the French system is working. It's fascinating, I think, and the federation which holds it all together is very important. From an organizational perspective, hospital at home is not a hospital, and it's certainly not primary care or secondary care in the community. And this session is meant to look at it from an organizational perspective. I think we had some hints. Money was already on the table here. Why 200, 800, how does it work? What kind of patients? I still have the red light here. It's not mine, it's the previous session. Just to make sure that... so I want to invite my colleagues for this session, Moshe Ostrover, who is also a friend, and so you will come, Bianca Burman, and Claire Davenport, which I will present after my presentation. Please come to the stage. So let's talk about stakeholders. Some of the speakers yesterday and even today started speaking about them, and I'll try to put some context into it. And I start with this.
There will be several stakeholders interested in any problem that involves people. My hen is too noisy, but who says so? And who cares about the noise? Each stakeholder in this noisy hen system will see the system differently. For example, the local councillor stakeholder will see the hen as an element in the residents' rights system. A lawyer will see the hen as an element in the civil rights system. And a farmer will see it as an element in the food industry system. And me? The hen is my pet, so it's an element in my lifestyle system. Therefore, when starting to think about a social problem, it may be wise to identify all those interested in the problem and in the possible solutions. Do not forget to include yourself. Having identified which system the stakeholders perceive the hen to be part of, it is then necessary to think about how the stakeholders see their system. For example, the local councillor might see his or her system, let's call it the residents' pet management system, working as like the mechanism of a clock, or as people posturing and politicking, or as individuals dealing with personal anxieties.
I love the accent, so it's not mine. Now that we understand how to look at stakeholders, I think it's very important in hospital at home to take a deeper look and to understand. There's a way to analyze stakeholders and to do it professionally. And it's very important because when you start looking at it professionally, then you understand that your priorities should be directed and your efforts and resources towards the right stakeholders, and don't waste your time on the not right stakeholders. So the stakeholder analysis is a process of systematically gathering and analyzing qualitative information to determine whose interests should be taken into account when developing or implementing a policy or program, or enlarging and expanding a policy program. So you're already experts on the app, and we start with the first questions. In your eyes, please mention the main two stakeholders in your hospital at home program. Surprising? No, not surprising. Wow, patients. No, well, that's encouraging. And hospitals, they got, okay, friends and less than friends. And care providers, caregivers, HMO directors, nurses, payers, what else do we see here? Clinicians, executives. Okay, not far, not far. That's very important. We are all working at it, and we understand who are, and I'm very happy that patients are on the first place, which is very great. So I took before and thought about some of them just to explain the idea of stakeholder analysis. And surprisingly enough, patients are in the middle, but the families are as important, and there are many others. Of course, payers and the money trail should be understood, and the tech vendors and the hospital administrators and the policymakers. And I want to speak a minute or half a minute about the process. We must understand how does it work? How does the system that we are involved in work? What's the patient trail in addition to the money trail? What's the patient trail? What's the journey that the patient goes through in terms of administratively to understand where should we intervene to change the path? And it's not the same at every place. Even in one country, it's not the same in every hospital or every health system. And we must take into account and consider the process itself as a stakeholder, which we must learn. And it's not always easy to understand because it's not always written or understood even by the people who do it day in and day out. And that requires a lot of discussions and explaining and listening to our colleagues in other organizations. As Karen yesterday said, dozens of meetings again and again and again and again to understand the real hints and bits and pieces of the process. So what does it mean to analyze it? Now from those, you know what, we'll skip this because you already said that patients are the most important. Out of those, the stakeholder quadrant map, that's the tool that I recommend to use. You can do it in 30 minutes just to put in context the main points. So the x-axis is talking about the interest of the stakeholder in the hospital at home. Is it, where do they see hospital at home? It's good for them, bad for them, we'll talk about it. They must, that's the x-axis. We understand whether it's at all in their interest or interesting to them. And the y-axis is the power that they have on the system. Now, those are the axes, and we must look at them carefully to understand how to approach each one of the stakeholders. So the right upper quadrant is the key player. Those are the most important people, and we have to put them in that quadrant after we understand the system, and we have to focus on them, to involve them as early as possible, whether you are starting a program or whether you are expanding a program, whether you want to add patient groups into your program, new technology that brings new opportunities. As we heard yesterday at home, suddenly someone is going to lose, okay? So we must consider it, or at least might think that he's going to lose, she's going to lose, so that we must engage and consult with them regularly. It is time-consuming, it is effort, but we must keep them close to the progress, and even partners sometimes. And we can do together sometimes very important things. So that's the most important, of course, easy to understand, most important quadrant. The second one are people who are very powerful, but not really interested. Powerful in terms of decision-making, controlling the money, controlling the regulation, but they have other areas of interest, other priorities, political priorities. We must think about them because they influence us, and then they don't really care about us. So we have to do something about it. The main thing is the bold thing, take them to the right. Find a way to engage with them. As someone told me yesterday, and we're always talking about, if a family member of theirs is treated by us, usually it ends the discussion. They are already convinced that hospital at home is the best way to treat people. But we need some luck and timing in that. So try to increase the level of interest, to explain, spend time. It's worthwhile. They're powerful, remember. The third group, who are the people who are not powerful, but highly interested, but they might be, we have to keep them close. We have to be in touch with them. They can help us, maybe in a lower magnitude, but still think about them, and they can be goodwill ambassadors for our programs. And the last ones, we only need to inform them what's going on and communicate, you know, not to spend too much effort and to try and keep some of the time to the upper right quadrant. So that's the stakeholder quadrant map. And what we actually need to do now is to, we're not doing it now, but we have to take each one of those, whoever thinks that he has others, maybe there are dozens of others, and put them on the map and start the work and bring them on board as early as possible, and it's part of our working program. So what do we do about the stakeholders? First of all, we have to understand what kind of interest do they have. Negative, positive, half and half. We have to really deeply understand what the kind of interest do they have. How do they feel about it? What's the best way to engage them? So, you know, professionals sometimes are more comfortable when professionals are approaching them, not administrators. Administrators sometimes feel more comfortable when others are approaching them, or maybe they have to be invited to conferences to speak or whatever. So in general, try to pinpoint what will work on that stakeholder. It's very, very important. Don't do automatic work plan. What motivates them? It's not easy to understand, but we can guess, and then we can speak with them. It's me. And we can speak with them and try to absorb, to understand what are the motivations. It's not always easy, but it's worthwhile, because when we understand what motivates them, then it's easier to tackle it. Everybody needs information, but he needs the right information at the right time, the right amount. You know, we are in 2020 almost, and we read very little because we don't have time. Everything is running. Emails are 2 lines. They are the long emails, you know, and so how to bring the actual important information to their view and attention. What would encourage them to support, especially the ones who are powerful but not interested? What will make them interested? And that's the answer is not one. The answer is specific to each stakeholders, and it's it's a task to manage that group and to bring them on board. And very important, they might influence others. So if they are powerful and against, that's very dangerous, because they speak, we don't know about it, but they speak with others, they influence others. We have to try to understand who are those others, and then tackle both sides. And because we have a project to bring, to expand, to put up, we have to be very, very careful about it. So, finally, what I recommend is, after we did the map and we understand the priorities, so now we divide the work between our teams, and we try to find who will speak, who will manage which stakeholder, and it's part of the program, part of the day-to-day. Why are we tackling that stakeholders? Who is going to do it? Who is responsible? Who is the key responsible person for that stakeholders? What is he going to do? Bring him to conferences, whatever we decide. Meet him on a monthly basis to update about the progress that we made. Tell him stories about our patients, where, when, how. You'll decide it because you're all professionals, but don't forget that you must have an action plan as part of the day-to-day of putting up or expanding a program. Thank you very much.